All right, let's dive into this deep dive into Camus's The Plague. You guys sent in some really good excerpts focusing on the book's structure and some summaries of each of the parts. So,
Right.
yeah, so we're going to kind of pick that apart and try to extract what makes this book resonate even today, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not just going to recap the plot. You can get that anywhere. We're
Yeah.
going to go a little deeper.
Absolutely. The Plague is not just a historical fiction piece. It's an exploration of really how we react as humans when our world is just turned upside down.
Yeah, and like Camus throws us right into Oran, right? The
Yeah.
city.
Yes.
That's so ordinary. It's almost like he's setting us up. He's like,
You know,
look, this could be anywhere, anytime. Don't get too comfortable.
that's exactly it. The meticulous detail that he uses to describe Oran's everyday life,
Yeah.
like the focus on commerce and routine and even the stifling heat,
Yeah.
really emphasizes how utterly unprepared they are for what's coming.
Yeah.
It's like he's highlighting the fragility of our own sense of normalcy.
And then, boom, dead rats
Right.
everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I love how he captures that initial human response. It's not panic, not immediate action. It's like
It's annoyance.
annoyance, denial.
Denial.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No, get this out of here.
It's so true to life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just an inconvenience at first.
Yeah.
People grumble about it. They blame the sanitation workers.
Right.
It's almost comical how they try and rationalize it away.
It's like those first few cracks in the foundation before you realize
Exactly.
the whole house is about to crumble.
Yes.
And that's where Dr. Rieux steps in. Not only is he our narrator, but he's also the one who recognizes the danger, that gut feeling that something is terribly wrong.
He's such a fascinating character, Rieux,
Yeah.
because you'd kind of expect a doctor in this situation to be like the ultimate voice of reason,
Right.
this beacon of hope,
Right.
but Camus makes him way more complex than that.
Yeah.
Rieux's is driven by a sense of duty, yes, but there's also this kind of a weariness to him, like this quiet despair that almost suggests that he's seen this all before.
Yeah, that underlying tension between hope and despair is,
Oh.
I think, what makes him so relatable, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Rieux sounding the alarm. But what about the other characters, right?
Yes.
Because we've got this amazing ensemble cast, each reacting to the plague in their own unique way.
Let's start with Grand, the aspiring writer.
Okay.
So fixated on crafting the perfect opening sentence
Oh, yeah.
for his novel that he almost seems oblivious to the crisis that's unfolding.
Right.
Is he really?
Right.
Or is his meticulous writing a way to impose order on a world that's just suddenly become chaotic?
That's such a good point. It's almost like a defense mechanism, right?
Yes,
Clinging to routine when everything else is falling apart.
exactly.
And it makes you wonder, like, what would your Grand be
Yes.
in that situation? What would you cling to?
Right.
Then we've got Tarou, this outsider,
Yes.
who's meticulously documenting everything.
I know, it's fascinating.
He's fascinating because he's not from Oran.
right.
Right. So he has this detached perspective.
Yeah.
It's as though he's trying to make sense of the plague, not just as a medical event, but as a societal phenomenon.
Yeah,
He's like that friend that always sees things from a different angle, you know?
exactly.
Makes you question your own assumptions.
Yes.
Speaking of questioning assumptions, we've got Rambert, the
Like,
journalist who just wants to escape.
get me out of here.
Yeah. He's driven by personal desire,
Yes.
this longing for something beyond the confines of this quarantine city.
And Rambert represents that very human impulse to run from danger,
Yeah.
to prioritize our individual needs over collective responsibility.
Mm.
But his journey throughout the book is one of the most compelling because it forces him to confront what truly matters.
I'm already seeing how these different characters reflect different aspects of like ourselves, how we might react in a similar situation. And then there's Cotard,
Car.
this guy who actually thrives in the midst of the plague.
He's the enigmatic one, isn't he?
Yeah.
He seems to benefit from the breakdown of societal norms, the fear, the uncertainty. It's like this chilling reminder that for some people, crisis brings opportunity.
It's like those stories you hear about people who exploit disasters for personal gain.
Exactly.
There's a darkness there that Camus doesn't shy away from.
No, he doesn't.
So we have this cast of characters all grappling with the reality of the plague
Yes.
in their own way.
And it's important to remember that these characters aren't just individuals.
Right.
They represent these different facets of the human condition.
Right.
The anxieties, the hopes, the selfishness, and the resilience
Right.
are all reflected in these figures that he's created.
Okay, so part one sets the stage.
It does.
We have the city.
Dude.
We have this creeping dread.
Yes.
And the characters are all poised on the brink of something huge.
They are.
What really strikes me, though, is the deliberate pace. Camus doesn't rush the story.
Right.
He lets that tension build slowly,
He does.
mirroring the way a real epidemic would unfold.
Exactly. And that slow build makes the impact of part 2 so powerful.
Okay.
Because once the city goes into full lockdown, the true nature of the plague, and really human nature,
Yeah.
is laid bare.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's, I think, a perfect place to pause for now.
It is.
Because when we come back, we're diving into part 2, where the situation in Oran intensifies,
Oh, it does.
and the characters face choices that will define them.
Absolutely.
Buckle up.
Yes,
It's about to get real.
it is.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the plague. Last time we left off with Oran, like, on the verge of lockdown. That kind of unsettling shift from inconvenience to, like, oh, this is really happening.
Right. And that shift is where Camus' genius really shines, I
Okay.
think. Because it's not just about the physical barriers, you know?
Yeah.
The closed gates and the quarantine measures and all that.
Yeah.
It's the psychological impact, right?
Yeah.
The city becomes like a pressure cooker.
Right.
All those carefully constructed routines that we talked about
Yes.
just completely shatter.
Yeah. Suddenly, it's not just about avoiding the rats, right? It's
No.
the isolation, the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
Even, like, little things, mail service being cut off,
It's true.
really amplify that feeling of being trapped. Camus uses these details to create a sense of claustrophobia that's, I don't know, almost palpable.
It's masterful how he does that.
Yeah.
And the way he portrays that kind of like collective anxiety,
Yeah.
it's not mass hysteria or anything,
Right.
but just this like creeping dread
Yeah.
that seeps into every aspect of life.
Yeah.
And you start to see the cracks in those societal structures,
Yeah.
how people react when faced with this kind of like invisible, unpredictable enemy.
And speaking of reacting,
Mhm.
this is where we see those, like, individual responses that we kind of touched on earlier really come to the forefront.
They do.
Rieux, as we'd expect, dives headfirst into the fight. He's driven by, that medical oath, but also, I think, like, a need to find order in chaos.
Absolutely. There's a real stoicism to Rieux,
Yeah.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
He doesn't indulge in despair or these grand pronouncements.
Right.
He just focuses on what needs to be done,
Right.
even when it seems like an impossible task.
It's almost like he embodies Camus's philosophy of the absurd, right? Like,
yes.
confronting a meaningless universe with action, even if the outcome is totally uncertain.
Yes.
But then we have Rambert, who's fixated on escape, right?
Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He represents, that very human desire for freedom,
Absolutely.
even if it means putting others at risk.
His storyline raises such a fascinating ethical dilemma, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are the limits of individual freedom
Right.
when society is facing a collective threat?
Yeah.
Can we justify pursuing our own desires when it might endanger others?
It's a question that has resonated throughout history, hasn't it?
It really has.
And it's still relevant today, especially during,
Oh, absolutely.
times of crisis.
Absolutely.
But then there's Theroux, who chooses a very different path. He's not from Oran,
Right.
could easily, like, distance himself, but instead,
Jumps right in.
yeah, he throws himself into helping others.
Theroux is so fascinating
Yeah.
because he represents this kind of like radical compassion,
Yes. Yes.
He chooses to fight the plague, not out of duty or obligation, but out of this deep sense of just human solidarity.
Yeah.
He sees the suffering, he can't turn away.
It's like he embodies that quote from Camus, like,
Yes.
in the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. Even in the darkest times, there's this spark of human connection and a refusal to give in to despair.
It's beautiful.
And then there's Panelou, the priest,
Yeah.
and his reaction is so different from Rieux, but yet just as compelling.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He initially sees the plague as divine retribution, right?
Right. A punishment
Yeah, like punishment for the sins of humanity.
for the sins of humanity. Exactly.
And his sermons offer a kind of order
Right.
to the chaos,
Yes.
a way to make sense of the suffering through faith.
Right.
But it's not that simple, is it?
Right.
Because as the plague intensifies,
Yes,
even Panelou's faith is tested.
it is.
He witnesses suffering that I think shakes his belief system to its core.
Absolutely. And his second sermon
Yeah.
reflects that struggle.
Yeah.
It's this incredibly moving exploration of doubt,
Yeah.
of grappling with the limitations of human understanding.
Right.
in the face of this profound tragedy.
It's a reminder that even those who seek solace in faith are not immune
They're not.
to the existential questions the plague raises.
They are not.
Okay, so we have all these different reactions, these personal struggles
Yeah.
playing out against this backdrop of this ever-worsening epidemic.
And Camus does not hold back
No.
in his depiction of the plague's impact.
No, he does
The
not.
city becomes this just desolate landscape.
Yeah.
The streets are empty. The air is thick with the stench of death.
Yeah.
Even his language becomes very stark,
Yes.
almost clinical,
Yeah.
reflecting that brutal reality.
There's this one scene that always sticks with me,
Yeah.
and it's the death of the child.
Yes, it's heartbreaking.
And it's so heartbreaking.
It is.
Not just because of the loss,
Yes.
but because it shatters even the most kind of hardened characters.
Yeah.
Rieux, who's been so stoic, is visibly shaken.
Yes.
It's a reminder of the plague's just indiscriminate cruelty, how it doesn't care
It doesn't care.
for logic or reason.
It's a moment of just pure emotional devastation.
Yeah.
And it underscores the absurdity of it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This senseless loss in the face of a force that seems beyond human control.
And yet, amidst all this darkness, there are these flickers of hope.
There are.
Right.
Yes.
These moments of resilience. We see people coming together to help each other, forming those bonds of solidarity that I think tarot embodies.
Absolutely.
Even in the face of death, there's like a testament to the human spirit.
There is.
And then as we transition into part 4, there's this subtle shift, right? It's
Yeah.
not an immediate victory. It's more like a fragile hope,
Yes.
a sense that just maybe the tide is turning.
And that ambiguity is crucial, right?
Yeah.
Because Camus isn't interested in simple resolutions or happy endings.
No.
He wants us to understand that the struggle doesn't just magically end
Right.
when the plague subsides.
Right.
The scars remain and those questions linger.
Right. Which is a perfect place to pause because we're going to delve into those questions, that ambiguous aftermath and the enduring legacy of the plague when we come back. Welcome back to our deep dive into the plague. We've really walked the streets of Oran, felt the weight of that lockdown, the despair, but also, those sparks of resilience.
And as the plague starts to recede in part 4, we see the city kind of like exhale. There's this cautious optimism,
Yeah.
a slow return to life. But as you said earlier,
Yeah.
Oran is, I think, irrevocably changed.
It's like waking up from a nightmare, but the world around you is just, I don't know, it just looks different.
It does.
Yeah. Like the familiar is now unsettling.
Right.
And this is where Camus' ending, I think it's really interesting. Because it's not about, celebrating victory.
No.
It's about grappling with the aftermath, the scars, both physical and emotional.
Right. Take Rambert, for instance.
Yeah.
He had that chance to escape,
He did.
but he chose to stay and fight alongside the others.
Right.
Now, with the city reopening, he could easily slip back into his old life.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He's been, I think, fundamentally altered by this whole experience.
It's like he found a new purpose, like a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. He's
Yeah.
no longer that self-centered journalist,
Right.
focused on his own escape.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's part of something larger now.
He is.
And contrast that with Capard, who, thrived during the plague.
Qatar.
Yeah, he reveled in the chaos, right?
Yes.
Profited from the fear. But as order returns, he panics. He's like a parasite that can only survive in a diseased host.
It's a chilling observation about, I think, human nature,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
How some people are just drawn to darkness, how they benefit from the suffering of others. And Cotard's fate, his descent into madness, I think really serves as a warning, like a reminder that the plague's impact extends, beyond the physical realm.
Absolutely. And then there's Rieux, the man who dedicated himself to fighting the plague, to alleviating suffering, and his death, so close to the end, almost feels like a betrayal.
It does, doesn't it?
You would expect someone like him to be rewarded
You would think.
for his selflessness.
His compassion.
His compassion, yeah. But instead, he's struck down almost randomly. It's like a gut punch.
It is, but it's also, I think, a crucial element of Camus's message,
Yeah.
because Tara's death really underscores the absurdity of it all. There's no grand design. There's no guarantee of justice or reward. Even the most virtuous
Yeah.
can succumb to the plague.
It's a sobering reminder that life, even in the best of times, is inherently unpredictable.
It is.
We can't control the forces that come at us, but we can control, I think, our response. And that brings us to one of the most, haunting aspects of the novel, the ending. The plague recedes, the city reopens, but Camus reminds us that the bacillus never truly dies, it just waits.
It's chilling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's this reminder that the potential for disaster, for suffering, is always present.
Right.
We may experience periods of calm, we may even believe we've conquered the darkness,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that threat remains,
Yeah, it's lurking.
lurking beneath the surface.
So what does this all mean for us, the readers? What do we take away from this journey through the plague?
Well, I think Camus is offering us a framework for understanding not just pandemics, but any crisis that throws our world into chaos.
Yeah.
He's showing us that even in the face of absurdity,
Yeah.
even when surrounded by suffering and death,
Yeah.
there's a choice to be made.
A choice between giving into despair or finding meaning in the struggle. Between isolating ourselves or connecting with others.
Yeah, and it's not about finding, easy answers or grand solutions.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even in a world where suffering is inevitable, we can choose to act,
Yes.
with courage, with decency, with hope.
It's about embracing that invincible summer that Taro embodied, that belief in human connection, even in the midst of winter.
The plague is such a powerful reminder that the human spirit is both fragile and incredibly resilient.
Yes.
Yes. We're vulnerable, yes, but we're also capable of these extraordinary acts of kindness and love and resistance.
It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it. I think it challenges you, it prompts you to look inward, to examine your own values, and to ask yourself, what side will you be on when the next plague arrives?
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive, but I hope this is just the beginning
Yes.
of your exploration of the plague and the profound questions that it raises.
Thank you guys for joining us on this journey. We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought, some new insights into this really timeless work of literature.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those conversations going.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive for another deep dive into a new topic. Until then, keep diving deep.